Good morning.
Good morning. We've talked the whole night through.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Friday morning, I've got a little bit of time this morning to go through some of the stuff in my studio that people have been asking about. I've been getting loads of messages about the Quantum and various other synthesizers I've got, so I thought I'd just take this opportunity this morning to take you through some of it. So we'll start off with the Prophet 12. This is by Dave Smith and it's a analog synthesizer, and it sounds like this. It's a very warm sounding synth. I've spoken to people in the past who have said that they didn't think it really had the warmth, but I guess it's really about how you program it and the sort of, you know, your approach to making a sound on it. I mean, if I change it from Kelper to something like Optics, you know, and you've got these wicked latch options here, so if I adjust these a little bit, it's also really good for string sounds. For instance, I made this Ways preset, which reminded me of Dillinger's Nasty Ways. Okay, so moving up from the Prophet, we have got the Roland JDXA. I was after this for ages, man. When this first came out, it was just a sort of like a dream synth. So to have this in the studio is really cool. And in a nutshell, to explain how it's different from the Prophet, it's a hybrid, it's a digital analog hybrid. So up here you can see we've got analog parts and digital parts. So that's really cool because if I want to make a more analog sound and then mix a digital signal into it, I'm able to do that, which is something you can't do on just obviously regular analog synthesizers. I really like this synth for creating atmosphere. So if we It's got some really nice strings on it. And the way you select the presets is very much like the old Jupiter method from back in the day. You just got these buttons to go through. Let's try this analog string. Okay, so moving up from the JDXA, we have got the Novation Ultra Nova. I've had this for a long time, probably about 10 years now. This is just a digital synthesizer, so I say just, that's super powerful still. But yeah, it's a nice contrast with the blue. It's definitely not about the colour, obviously, it's more about what it sounds like. So yeah, this synth can pretty much do anything. It's pretty small, it's one of the smallest keyboards I've got, but size is not always the key factor, it's more about the sound. And actually, if I hold down these keys and use this preset, I can talk a bit like Daft Punk or Adam F, music in my mind. So that is that rack of keyboards talked about. Let's move over here and talk about this rack. So this synth is probably the one I get asked the most about. It's just called the Waldorf Quantum. It's brand new. There is literally a handful of these in the UK at the moment. I waited 6 months on a list to get one. They were supposed to get 15 in and they got 2. So what does it do synthesis-wise? Well, it does quite a few different types of synthesis. It does waveform. So if I just click here, look, you can see that we've got our different types of waveforms coming up there. Squares, noise, yeah, everything. Basically everything you need for waveform synthesis is there. Then you've got wavetable, which if I press this, you can see this is actually a wavetable that I have imported. You can put your own wavetables into this from things like Serum, Massive, and you can also make your own wavetables. But this is a preset I made using the wavetable. It also has another type of synthesis I love, which is the granular. So as you can see there is a a little bit of audio in there, and that is something, again, you can import your own audio and start to mess with it. And this was something I used the other night, so let's have a little listen to this. The filters on this thing are ridiculous as well. If I just play a chord, and I can control that with my finger. So yeah, this keyboard, much like the other ones really, is capable of any sound, but just has a unique workflow to it that I really like. And if anybody wants to ask any more questions, please feel free to give me a shout. So moving up from the Waldorf, we're moving into a one-off synthesizer by two people, Dave Smith and Tom Oberheim. This is called the OB6, and this is definitely one of my favourite synthesizers in the room. It has a very cool, unique sort of retro look and a retro sound. Loads of different presets. It's got a similar kind of way that it works to the Roland JDXA, in the sense that you press these little buttons to get up the different presets. One that I particularly like is this one. Similar in the sense to the Dave Smith Prophet 12 I showed you earlier. This is completely analog, and it's only 6 voice, whereas the Dave Smith Prophet 12 is 12 voice. So it doesn't quite have the capabilities when it comes to power of voicing, but it is a definite formidable beast. And I love that there is no actual menu diving. Every single parameter is controllable just on the front panel, so everything that you need to craft and create your sound is right there in front of you. I love that. This synthesizer is capable of many different sounds. I mean, it does do some really nice little plucky mellow stuff, but if we take it down, okay, so moving up to the last synthesizer in this side, this is called the Pro 2 by Dave Smith. And this is a paraphonic synthesizer. Again, I've gone for a slightly different synth here because it's got a really good sequencer on it. It makes quite a unique sound. It's got quite a few controls that are similar to the Dave Smith Prophet 12 that I have over there. But just have a little listen to this, to how this sounds. Select a sound here. So if we move over to the actual desk now, you can see I've got these sound modules here. These haven't got keyboards attached, but there is a way to play them here. So basically there is a load of different analog styled keyboards and from the 80s in here. Let's try this OB strings quickly. Okay, so right underneath the Integra is the JV 1080. I've had that little black box there for the last 18 years. It works the same kind of way to the Integra. You've got this little wheel, and with the wheel you can turn through selections of different sounds. If we try this one, for instance. Also, I think I forgot to mention that both of these modules are capable of doing 16 of those sounds at the same time. So that means you can have, as you can see on the Integra, look, there's 16 different places for sounds to exist. So it's the same for the JV. So super powerful when you think about, I was just using one sort of slot, if you like, for each of the sounds we were listening to. So also on this side of the studio we have the Machine Mark III. Machine is an absolute just game changer, I think. Once you kind of learn a workflow with it, I teach a lot of people Machine from scratch, and it literally changes the way they make music so much more for the better. And I say for the better because when I see them, say 8 months, a year after they did the Machine masterclass with me, the progression is just so clear, you know, it's like night and day. So I've just gone and dimmed the lights down so that you can see how this works. So I make a lot of my beats from scratch in Machine on different groups basically. So each group has got, like that one's just got one sound on it, and that's got 16 sounds on it. And basically if I press play, as I go through the groups, you can see. And then I can change that beat just by turning this little guy over here and maybe selecting another beat I made a different day. Let's try this one. Let's press play. Oh, discard, press play. So it's really quick for me to just either go to a beat that I've maybe made previously, but a lot of the time I'm actually just making beats from scratch in this thing because the workflow is that simple and actually that fun. So you know, these beats that are in here at the moment, I haven't actually used for any tunes yet. They're just beats that I've made from scratch and are probably waiting for a track to be made with them. This little guy here is basically my volume control, but does a lot more than just volume. You can have 2 different sets of speakers connected to this. You've also got snapshots for different types of mix, depending on how you want to configure it, basically. And then just here we've got my keyboard, which again couldn't just be an ordinary keyboard. Oh no, it's got all of my shortcuts for the DAW. Yeah, super useful. And then right up from the keyboard, right in front of me, I've got the Virus TI, little black and grey box. I say little, it's quite big, but it makes a huge sound. This is 16 multi-timbral, so it can do 16 sounds, just like the other modules I've got. The cool thing about this is a lot of VSTs were derived from this synthesizer. You know, the wavetable synthesis at the time when this had it in the hardware was quite a new thing. And yeah, basically things like Massive definitely were inspired by the Virus TI. Comes with a really cool plugin that also talks to the hardware unit, but there's no keyboard, so you have to play it from an external keyboard. Let's have a little listen. So that's quite a sick bass sound, and that is made purely in the Virus, no external kind of plugins or anything. And I think for anybody that is thinking, does the Virus TI really make that big sound? It does. You just have to program it like anything. You can't just expect to open the box and it'll make that sound. It's just, it is possible, as you just heard. Let's get another sound quickly. I will try this one. So over here in this part of the desk, I've got my RME sound card setup, I've got both the UFX and then I've got the expansion for it. So that basically means that this guy here is the main sort of heart of the sound card, and this is where a lot of the external stuff is being plugged into. It alleviates me having to have a mixing desk, which, to be honest, I don't really want a mixing desk. The mixing is actually done all over here on digitally on the screen, but you do get a little miniature kind of one here if I play some keys, for instance. So that was the JDXA, this is the Prophet. So beneath the RME setup, we've got a simple patch bay, which just allows me to send different signals to different destinations. Always really useful to have in the studio. So yeah, in front of the RME setup, I've just got a little JP08 by Roland. This is, in effect, a miniature version, if you like, of the Roland Jupiter 8, which came out in the 80s. It's not quite as accessible, but still sick. So this is just like, even though it's tiny, it's just like the Prophet 12 in the sense that it's analog. And you could hear that from the characteristic of that filter on the first example when I played it and I adjusted it, had that very kind of analog sound to it. And then down here we've got a Dynaudio sub, which is running through the whole system and handles all the bass.